The Detroit Pistons have secretly, quietly, down low been pretty good this year, okay? The Detroit Pistons, I know, good and Detroit kind of sounds like an oxymoron. They don't really go together. But as of this year, they've actually been pretty damn decent. And I'm not saying they're great. I'm not saying they're even a playoff level team. But I'm saying that they're off to one of their better starts in a very long time. And I think there's a reason for optimism going forward as well. And I think this is a very good start and milestone for the Detroit Pistons organization to really get to where they want to go. And they are currently 10-16. I know what you're thinking, like, that's not good. And I'm aware of that. But when you compare that to a lot of other starts in the past for the Detroit Pistons, you would find out very quickly that this is an excellent year for Detroit Pistons standards. As although 10-16, like I said, not amazing, if you look at the other first 26 games of past seasons for the Pistons, you will find out very quickly this is a great start. Because let's just go look back a little bit. Last year in 2023 through 2024, they started the year 2-24. The year before that, 7-19. The year before that, 4-22. The year before that, 7-19. And then the year before that, they tied the same start with a 10-16 start. And then the year before that, in 2018 through 19, is where you finally find a better start where they went 13-13. So as you see, this is literally tied for the second best start they've had since the 2018 season, okay? Like, this is an amazing start for the Pistons, and I think they have a lot more reason to be hopeful going into the future than they did even in 2018, because in 2018 they were an older team, they had more vets, and their future really didn't look that bright. It kind of was like a flash in the pan type start. But this year is a completely different story, and I think for sure they are setting themselves up to make the playoffs in the future, or at least a play-in game in the future, and I think this team is in a excellent spot. And then before I even get into why I think this team has such a bright future, I want to say some of the moves that got them there and why I think they were such big moves. The first thing they did this offseason was hire JB Bickerstaff. Now, the reason I love JB Bickerstaff here is because he was in a very similar situation with the Cleveland Cavaliers, because before the Cavaliers were good after LeBron left, they had to rebuild that team, and JB Bickerstaff is who the coach was that helped do that. And he brought a very young, not great team, a very inexperienced team, to become a very good playoff level team for a lot of years. Now, yes, he got fired because he wasn't able to win in the playoffs, but the Pistons are not worrying about the playoffs right now. They're just worrying about winning as many games as possible and just getting better every single day. And I think JB Bickerstaff, with a guy who has experience in that exact situation with the Cavaliers, I think he can translate that easily to the Detroit Pistons, who is littered with young talent and needs to get better and learn how to win. And I think Bickerstaff is a perfect pick for them, and they should have their coach for at least a few years now. And then even some other moves that they made, they traded for Tim Hardaway Jr., and in that they were able to get 3 second-round picks, and they basically got rid of nothing. I think they traded Quentin Grimes in that trade, and I mean, look, Quentin Grimes, solid player, but was going to do nothing for Detroit this year, and he's never going to be a star or anything, so there was really no point in the Pistons keeping them, especially when you can replace them with a veteran who has on an expiring contract and get a lot of draft capital in return. And that is exactly what the Pistons did, and I think that was an amazing trade for them. And then in the draft, they even had a pretty good draft. They drafted Ron Holland, whose ceiling is absolutely through the roof. Yes, he's very raw, he has a lot of things to work on, but his athleticism, and he's already shown flashes of it in the NBA this year, his potential is just unbelievably through the roof. And if he can ever get that jump shot down, which I think he will, because he even showed glimpses of that in the G League 2 years ago, and I just think overall Ron Holland was a very good pick for them, and it was kind of a swing for the fences. And then even Bobby Klintman, not a lot of people talk about him, and he hasn't made a huge impact this year, but he was one of my favorite second round picks of the entire class last year. He has tons of potential. He's very tall, very talented. He just has a great build for the talents he provides, and I think overall this was an amazing draft for them, and they got 2 players that are going to be at least rotational guys for them going forward, and I think Ron Holland can legitimately be a superstar if his ceiling does hit. And then even in free agency, which they usually aren't huge players in, they made some very smart acquisitions where they signed Tobias Harris for a pretty team-friendly contract, in my opinion. Tobias Harris, I think he's on a 2 or 3 year deal, and he is just absolutely a very solid player. He's like the perfect veteran to not step on Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey's toes, but he is a guy that is just good enough to be a leader on a team. He can show them how to win, teach them a few things, and provide value on the court as well. So he's not just a veteran veteran on there. He's not just a coach type of guy. He's a very talented guy, and he can just play very well with them and really help the young guys out. And then even Malik Beasley is another veteran they signed on a 1-year, very team-friendly deal for a very cheap deal as well. And Malik Beasley is just one of those guys who can off your bench give you a bucket anytime you need. And I think Malik Beasley was an amazing signee there, and he helps them a lot off of the bench. And I really want to just keep diving kind of into their actual like starting five, not even starting five, but like their roster, their main guys on the roster a little bit. Starting with Tobias Harris again, like I said, very team-friendly contract, only $26 million a year. That could sound a little expensive to some people for Tobias Harris, but with how the NBA is going, $26 million a year for a veteran who can give you about 20 points a game any given night, I think it was a very solid deal. And like I said, it's not like he's their long-term option. I think he's kind of a stopgap guy to really help Ron Holland develop off the bench. And when Ron Holland's ready to start, he's going to take Tobias Harris's spot, and that's going to be their long-term like power forward / small forward type guy. And I think that is a very smart thing to do, to have a bridge starter while a guy that needs to develop is developing behind him and learning as much as he possibly can. And I think that is a huge thing to do. So not only does Tobias Harris help them win now, he kind of helps them win later because he allows Holland to develop. And then Malik Beasley, only a 27-year-old, to sign him to only a $6 million 1-year contract is huge because he's a very good three-point shooter. He's a very solid scorer. He takes the pressure off the stars. He helps the bench unit when they come in. He's just overall an extremely solid player. And like I said, an unbelievably team-friendly deal for a guy like Malik Beasley as well. Tim Hardaway Jr., definitely not a part of their future, but he's on an expiring deal. Plus, you got draft capital. Amazing deal for the Pistons, in my opinion. Cade Cunningham is literally one of the most underrated players in the entire NBA. In my opinion, he's a star-level player, and he gets literally no media attention. He was a former #1 overall pick, and nobody talks about him, but he's averaging 23.5 points per game, 7.2 rebounds per game, 9 assists per game, and is also one of the most underrated passers in the entire NBA, and he's still only 23 years old, and I think he's probably showing potential to be a #1 option on an NBA team going into the future. And then another huge name for the Pistons, Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey is looking like a legit second option in the NBA. He's improving in his efficiency every single year since he's gotten here. He's averaging a career high in points per game right now. He can really do very different things, and he's doing all this despite having 3 different head coaches. So for him to still be consistently improving while having different regimes come in every single year since he's been in the NBA is an absolute very impressive thing. And I think that with Bickerstaff really providing consistency now, they should legitimately have a very good foundation to build off of, and these players should really be able to thrive and develop very fast. And he is only 22 years old. So really, with those players and the great moves they made, the Pistons have a lot of reasons for optimism. But now for what I said in the beginning of the video, why I think this team is different from even the 2018 through 19 team who had a better start to the Pistons than this year's Pistons team. I think the reason they have a better future and a lot more reasons to be excited for the future is because of a few different things. One of the things is that they finally have their coach for the foreseeable future. When you switch your team's head coach every single year, that team is only going to be so good. You're going to have no consistency, no chemistry, and it's just overall a very weird thing for the players to be a part of. And I think with them hiring Bickerstaff, I think that's going to be their coach for the future. That's going to be their long-term guy, and they're going to be able to really build something around Bickerstaff, and he's going to be able to fill out his staff, and he's going to be able to make a system, and he's really going to help this team thrive. And that is huge for the players and coach, and really just organization as a whole, to have the leader be a consistent face for a long time. And then on top of that, their 2 best players, like I said earlier, in Ivey and Cunningham, are extremely young. They have tons of room for improvement, and they're still looking like star-level players, even though they're not even close to their primes right now. And then also their starting and even backup bigs are basically solidified for a very long time. Look, I'm not a huge fan of Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart. I thought Jalen Duren probably shouldn't have been a lottery pick, but since I was their second lottery pick of that draft, I was like, that's not that bad. So I think Jalen Duren is good enough to be a starting center in the NBA for sure. Now, he definitely has a problem because his ceiling is so low due to his skill set, but still, freak athlete, can block shots, can dunk, can be an alley-oop threat, pick and roll type thing. So overall, I think he's an extremely solid player right there. And then Isaiah Stewart, I think, is more than good enough to be at least a backup power forward. They may have to get a backup center, but I think Stewart does his thing when he's in there at center. He's super strong. He has more offensive talent than Duren for sure, but he's not as good defensively. And although I think Isaiah Stewart is definitely a very solid guy, you could probably improve from there. But at least for now, I think their big man rotation is pretty much cinched up. Like, they got what they want to have, because then even at power forward, Tobias Harris and Ron Holland, that's going to be their start. That's going to be their power forward duo for a while. So their big man, I think, are perfectly set up for the future, and they're only going to develop and get better as time goes on. Another huge reason for optimism for the start is the fact that they did it basically all without having Azur Thompson. Yes, Azur Thompson has kind of been there for the back few games of the last 26, but to start the season, he was not there at all due to an injury, and I think that is very, very impressive, because Azur Thompson is an amazing defender. He made an all-rookie team last year, just all-around very good defender. He can't really shoot that well, but he's definitely going to develop that, and to be able to get off to that good of a start without a guy who is a pretty big part of your rotation on a normal night-to-night basis, especially last year, I think is a huge deal, because it shows that they can deal with some adversity and still be a somewhat successful team, especially to their standards. And I think overall, with getting Azur Thompson back, they're only going to get better, and as he develops, he's only going to get better, and the team should really even improve from there. And then lastly, I think Bobby Klintman, like I said, was also one of the best second round picks in the entire draft, and he's probably going to be at least a rotational guy for them in the future, and should be a very, very solid pickup for them going forward. But unfortunately, guys, that's going to be my first video. So comment below, do you agree with me? Do you think that the Pistons have a lot of reasons for optimism? Do you think they're going to be good going in the future? I want your thoughts in the comment section below. And to like point, hit the like button and subscribe button. I mean, that's the word to me. And I hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day, so you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah.